In our last episode, we discovered a recording that had been played to Sofia while she was asleep in space. It was the sound of whales singing. But amongst the whale song, there was something disturbing. One lone robotic beep. To figure out what was going on, we tracked down Sofia's medical records, only to discover that the USSA was experimenting on Sofia. They were attempting to increase the data transmission speeds of her neural pathways using something called Serum Z, a drug custom-made by Arctos Pharma for use in zero-G environments, for use in orbit. Apparently, this Serum Z helped open her neural pathways, increasing her cortex activity and allowing her to be some sort of conduit for something. But to make matters worse, we learned that Emerson Hale, Sofia's old friend, was in charge of the deep sleep program. He didn't just manage it, he personally negotiated the contract for Serum Z between the USSA, Robco, and Arctos Pharma. He knew exactly what they were doing to Sofia, and he's been lying to us this entire time. But while we were uncovering all of these dark secrets, Sofia noticed that a protectron was circling around our camp. She studied it for a while to try and find out who it was communicating with, but enough was enough. It unnerved her so much that at last she sent us to destroy it. This protectron signal is emanating from the nearby New Appalachian Central Trainyard. This location isn't involved in any quests, so while we're here, we'll take the time to explore it. Following the train tracks north from our camp, we arrive at the New Appalachian Trainyard. We see a warehouse off to the left, and some sort of ruins with a switching station off to the right. We'll explore this warehouse first. There was a parking lot just outside, but all we find is one ruined truck here. So heading inside, we see a number of shipping containers, but this warehouse is mostly empty. No enemies and just a few abandoned trains. Moving clockwise, we find an armor workbench against the wall, a door leading back outside, nothing out here, and then a number of containers and tables with scrap and blueprints along the western wall. When we reach the northern wall of the warehouse, we find a door leading back outside. We see train cars on the tracks outside, but we'll explore them in a minute. There is one train car on the tracks inside the warehouse. Here we just find one explosives crate. Moving out, we find a power armor frame here. It has the potential to spawn high-level power armor pieces. We can go ahead and snag the fusion core. Against the northern wall, we find a skeleton holding a drinking glass. Looks like one of these workers was having a refreshing beverage when the bombs dropped. We see another track alongside the first one moving north to south. There's a flatbed here with a shipping container, and one more train car that we can explore. Inside, we find a portable stove, a table, and a skeleton on the ground. There's a sleeping bag here with a cooler, and behind us we find a makeshift bathroom. Looks like someone tried to turn this into a home after the war, but he didn't last long. Moving out, we can continue clockwise. There are more shelves against the eastern wall. We find one footlocker here, and more minor scrap. There's a door to the southeast that leads to a small workshop with a weapons workbench inside, and a door leading back outside. Moving back in, we bump against the northeastern wall here. We find a door leading to the eastern platform, but that's it for the warehouse. Looking north, we see that switching tower and a couple of tracks, but the train cars on these tracks look really mangled. What, was this place hit with a nuke? What exactly happened here? Hopping atop the train cars, we can get a better look at this wreckage. The cars on the western tracks look more or less intact, but something awful happened there to the east. We see a big brick structure that looks like it's been hit by a train. Next, we'll move on to this first switching tower, but at the very top, we don't find much. A few crates, one desk with a ham radio, and that's it. So hopping back down, we can examine each of these train cars to find any open ones that we can explore inside. And there are only a few. We find a wrecked one with both ends apparently sheared right off. It's tipped over onto its side and there's nothing inside. We can climb into the southwesternmost car. Here we find a sleeping bag with a shopping cart and a crate with some sugar bombs inside. useful for crafting some brain bombs. Looks like someone tried to camp out here. And turning around, we see the prior inhabitant. There is a skeleton leaning against some crates with blood residue on the ground. But more disturbingly, we find a copy of Autopsy the board game with a bone saw. The fact that this skeleton is missing his entire left leg and both of his arms, along with the fact that we find an empty bottle of whiskey here, which was likely used as painkiller, leads us to believe that someone performed amateur surgery on this poor fellow. Looks like he didn't survive. Hopping from train car to train car, most of these are disappointing. In another, we find an ammo box, a couple of sacks, a tool case, and then a bunch of hallucinogen gas canisters. But what's interesting about this is 2 of them are ruptured. We already know from the events of Fallout 4 exactly what happens to people who are exposed to hallucinogen gas. We learned exactly what hallucinogen gas was doing here in Appalachia when I did my series on the Garahan Mining Company. The hallucinogen company in Boston was trying to break into the Appalachian market by selling their gas as a suppression agent to mining companies to combat their protesting miners. Ugh. You can watch my video on hallucinogen in Boston by clicking here. Could these ruptured hallucinogen gas canisters explain the utter carnage we see on these tracks? Hopping from train car to train car, we find one tipped over. The door is slightly askew, but sadly not askew enough for us to jump on down there. We can't explore this one. On a red one in the middle of the tracks, we find a duffel bag next to the skeleton of a pre-war American soldier. What was a soldier doing here? And why do we find him dead? From here, we get a handy 360 of the entire train yard, and we can take out some ghouls. And then, hopping down, we see the Protectron. On his wreckage is another algorithm update, but this one is slightly different. Program modification, Protectron model, transmission success, verify, done. Running update module, continuing whale song on target, calling monitor on target, selecting location, calling delete on sender, log, Athena. Activating defense mode, status, done. Athena was the name of the robot that said beep in the whale song holotape. Beep. And we already know that whale song is what Sofia was listening to. Could Sofia be the target that we see in this holotape? The target of the whale song. The target of this Protectron monitoring her, which would explain why it was hovering around the camp. Then does that mean that this Athena sent the robots? Is this Athena an artificial intelligence? And if so, why is she sending USSA robots to Sofia? Clicking on Execute Update. Current mode, Monitor/Defensive. Previous mode, Search and Destroy. Authorization, USSA 1010. Someone, maybe this Athena, sent the Protectron on a search and destroy mission. But this Protectron's mission was changed to monitor and defend, which is why we found it here at the Trainyard. Who had the authorization code USSA 1010? It must have been someone who at one point worked for the United States Space Administration. Who could that be? Near to this, we find another one of those beautiful, gorgeous pre-war engines. Man, I'll never get tired of looking at these beauties. What a feat of American engineering. Near to this engine, we see a bulldozer lifting up some shipping containers. Hopping onto a nearby container, we can get rid of one more ghoul. And we see that these shipping containers are surrounded by leaking toxic radioactive barrels. Near to this is a civilian picker-up truck with a towing rig in the back. This tells us that the devastation we find here on the tracks happened before the bombs dropped. After all, we find them actively trying to clean it up right now. They wouldn't bother cleaning up these tracks after the war. No, they were trying to clean this up so they could get the train yard in working order again. So if the bombs didn't derail all of these cars, what exactly did? Near to the second switching tower, we find another car that we can explore. Inside, we just find one explosives crate. And when ready, we can scale the staircase to explore the final switching tower. Here we find a couple of containers just like the last one, but unlike the last one, we find a terminal, the Switch Tower Operator's Terminal. Operator Al Wartzik. Incoming mail, August 12th, 2077. From Carrie Skinner. From everything we've learned, the armored train is scheduled to stop at New Appalachian Bank on September 28th around 5 a.m. There will be 4 armed guards with the shipment, 2 aboard the train and 2 riding behind in one of the other cars. It's easy pickings, I promise. I figure a 3-way split between you, me, and my brother would be fair, if you do your part. So Al Wartzik, a New Appalachian Trainyard employee, was in cahoots with 2 others to rob a bank. And there were only 4 guards, perhaps one of whom was the military skeleton we found on top of one of the train cars. In the next one, August 14th, 2077, from Carrie Skinner. I got the map of the train yard you sent. It looks like if you can rig switches 4 and 7, we can keep the train on the loading tracks. When we hit it, the engineer is going to try and gun it out of there. But guess what? Thanks to you, they ain't going anywhere. All you gotta do then is cover us from one of the switch towers in case someone tries to sneak up on us. In the next one, September 10th, 2077, from Carrie Skinner. It took some doing, but we bribed one of the cops that'll be riding shotgun on the armored train to lay low while my brother takes his place. And get this, he told us that the vault at the bank should be damn full that day. He wanted to make it a 4-way split, but we told him no way. We'll pay him just enough to keep his mouth shut. If he tries to blab anything after the job, I'll go around to his place and make sure he stays quiet permanently. In the next one, September 25th, 2077. From Carrie Skinner. All right, Al, we are 3 days from the job, so let's go over this one more time. The train pulls in at 5 a.m. They start loading up the vault car at around 5:15 a.m. When they're almost done, that's when we hit them. According to you, they take between 10 and 20 minutes to load, so if you don't see anything happening by 5:35 a.m., then something's gone wrong, and you should lay low. If we take the train, we'll load up everything we can on my brother's truck and meet at the farm. Make sure you delete all of this when you're done memorizing. Hang in there, buddy. We're about to get rich. So all that money in the bank vault was going to be loaded onto the armored train car at 5:15 a.m. That was their heist. But something clearly went wrong. Exactly how far into this plan did they get? In the next one, October 1st, 2077. Oh, that's several days after the date of the heist, which was September 28th. Did they miss it? From Marlon Reliker, Trainyard Supervisor. Al, we need you to stop what you're doing and let the workers continue the cleanup at the New Appalachian Central Trainyard. Then come on down to the central office right away. There's a man here from the federal authorities that has a few questions for you. Oh, and bring all your paperwork for the last 3 months, please. We've already backed up the emails on your terminal, so no need to bring those with you. See you soon. The robbery was a bust. Something happened. And instead of fleeing after the botched robbery, Al decided to stay here, pretend like he wasn't involved. But he forgot to wipe his terminal. And it sounds like he was finally caught. But this explains the bulldozer and the tow truck apparently performing a cleanup on the western side of the tracks. But how exactly did the bank robbery fail? Well, the only way to find out is to move southeast towards this mass of train wreckage. Hopping down, we see something scrawled in chalk at the base of one of these supports. It looks like a game of hangman. 3 letters, last letter E, 7 letters, something R-I, something something O-N, 4 letters, K-I-N something, G? Some fans believe that this game of hangman is supposed to spell the Crimson King. This could be a reference to either a character in Stephen King's The Dark Tower series, the Crimson King being a primary antagonist, or it could be a reference to the song The Court of the Crimson King by the band King Crimson. But I can't see how either reference pertains to the Fallout universe or to the plot we've so far unraveled here. As we move towards the wreckage, we see that much of it is mangled alongside a bunch of ruined buildings, and the engines appear to have been the epicenter of an explosion. Part of this engine is buried in the earth, and another part is in pieces at the bottom of a crater. Near to this, by the train car with the loose door that we couldn't squeeze through, is an end-of-dungeon steamer trunk. And here we find kitchen appliances scattered all over the ground. We see that they were being delivered in one of these train cars. Here's the car where they were likely being stored. The explosion from one of the engines scattered these appliances all over the ground. And turning around, we find a couple of train cars inside the nearby building. Is this the bank? Hopping down, we can look in the back of the building, and we see a couple of ways forward. One of these train cars forms a ramp leading to the roof. There's a hole in the wall leading to one room, and then we find 2 floors to the right that are completely sheared in half. We'll start by exploring this bottom floor. On the ground amongst the rubble, we find a human skeleton right before an opened vault door. Inside, we find a ghoul. Moving inside, we see dozens of box safes, all stacked atop each other. And in a corner, hugging a duffel bag with just a little bit of pre-war money inside, we find a skeleton next to a Tommy gun. Most of these box safes are completely busted. I only found 3 still intact. One locked with a skill level 1 lock, another locked with a skill level 2 lock, and a third locked with a skill level 0 lock. But perhaps the most interesting find is in one of these broken safes. At first, we see the silhouette of a face, and then we recognize it as a Fasnacht mask. It's the Fasnacht man mask, and it's being worn by an alien toy sitting in this safe. This is one of the few locations in the game that is a guaranteed spawn for the Fasnacht man mask, and in this setting, it is particularly creepy. So one of the robbers lies dead on the ground. We know Al was caught later. That leaves one robber unaccounted for, unless the skeleton outside belongs to robber number 3. Heading out, we find a hallway that leads outside, and from here, we discover what each of these buildings was. This, of course, was the new Appalachian Bank, and we see a light on in one of the second-story rooms. We'll have to explore that in a minute. To the right was a post office, and it looks like we can explore the second floor of this as well. To the left is one unmarked building, possibly an apartment complex, and the furthest building to the south was a train station where people could buy tickets. All of these doors are boarded up, so the only way to explore them is to head back inside the bank and climb a rubble ramp to the second floor of the bank. Going down the hallway first, we find human bones and a wheelchair scattered all over the ground. Then, opening a door to the left, we find a bank office. Lying on the desk in the office is the note, Employee Notice, New Appalachian Bank. Regarding the extensive damage to the bank's superstructure, the explosion from the botched robbery of Armored Train 781 has completely crippled the building, rendering it uninhabitable. We are saddened by the loss of life that occurred, and donations have been made to the appropriate families. For temporary job assignments while we access repairs, please contact bank administration immediately. So it was an explosion. And at this point, we can piece together the evidence we find here to try to paint a picture. Here's my best bet. According to Carrie's email on August 14th, Al's whole part in this plan was to rig track switches 4 and 7 to keep the armored train immobilized right in front of the bank. The idea behind this is that if the engineer tries to gun it and hightail it out of there, he'll be stuck and he won't be able to go anywhere. But I think what happened is with switches 4 and 7 rigged to make the train immobile, when the engineer gunned the engine, it couldn't go forward. But instead, all of that energy built up causing the engine to explode. That explosion sent the train cars right into the bank, the post office, and the other buildings. The shockwave of the explosion ruptured the hallucinogen canisters, which caused nearby people to go mad, including one of the train car guards, who then climbed on top of the train, pulled out his weapon, and started firing on the bank robbers and the employees of the bank indiscriminately. Carrie, and likely his brother, died on the scene. Al, hoping that his role in this whole scheme would go unnoticed, continued to come to work, pretending he had nothing to do with it, without realizing that all of his emails had been copied by corporate, whereupon days later, he was apprehended. This whole thing is actually a reference to the movie Dog Day Afternoon, starring Al Pacino, which itself depicts the real-world robbery involving a one John Wojtowicz. In 1972, John Wojtowicz, along with two other robbers, Salvatore Naturali and Robert Westenberg, tried to rob the Chase Manhattan Bank in Brooklyn. It, like this, was a botched robbery. But that's where the similarities end. In the real-world robbery and the one in the film, there wasn't an explosion and there weren't any trains. But the connection is still made by the name on the switch tower operator's terminal, Al Wartzik. John Wojtowicz, one of the real-world robbers, was renamed Sonny Wartzik in the film Dog Day Afternoon, and Sonny Wartzik was played by Al Pacino. Thus, in this terminal we find Al Wartzik. One other connection between what we find here at the Trainyard and the events in the movie is that in the movie, they accidentally rob the bank after the daily cash pickup.
There's no money here.
They picked it up this afternoon. There's only $1,100.
This is too much.
And therefore, they only find just over $1,000 in cash at the bank. And remember, when we explored the vault and we found the skeleton with the duffel bag, in the duffel bag, we only found 2 pre-war dollars. In the bank manager's office, we find 1 first aid kit and a couple of containers, but that's it. Moving out, we find another ruined office behind the manager's office. We find the previous occupant's rib cage on a desk. It must have taken quite some time cleaning this up after the botched robbery. And then we can move across the rooftops to explore the post office through a hole in the wall. We pass through a ruined room into another. Here we find a mechanic's jumpsuit. There is the body of a woman tucked into the corner of this room. Her personal effects are scattered all over her desk. And we find an empty bird cage here. Near to this is an office with a typewriter, with a baseball and a baseball glove, and another mechanic's jumpsuit hiding behind the door. Then if we head out and use one of the ruined train cars as a ramp, we can loot a wooden crate along the way and then access the roof. Here we find a couple of ramps made of scrap wood and a ladder leading to the rooftop of the train ticket office. On the corner of this roof, we find another skeleton next to a cooking stove, and he's holding on to a number of bird houses with a wooden chicken and a number of bird cages. I have a feeling that this is another pop culture reference, but if it is, I can't make it out. So if you know, let me know in the comments below. On the corner of the roof is a raider corpse, and then behind 2 crates with a first aid kit on top, we find teddy bears performing surgery. A bubblegum bear is holding a magnifying glass and sewing stitches into the butt of a polar bear. He has a needle in his hand, which is actually a really small screwdriver, and there's a spool of thread on the ground next to him. I don't know if the stitching here has any significance. It appears to be an X between 2 bars. The train station itself is completely destroyed. One of the train cars fell right into it. We can hop down from the roof to find the ventilation system sneaking through the attic, and then hopping down to explore the ticket area, we just find a big pile of rubble and a number of ruined containers with 1 skeleton. But this opens up into a room to the east. Here we find containers lining the walls, 1 skill level 1 locked box safe on the ground, a skill level 1 locked terminal on a desk, but all we find inside is the ability to unlock the box safe. There is the skeleton of a woman on the ground here, and the blood spatter on the ground paints a horrifying scene. Either she was killed on impact when the train car smashed into the building and her body slid across the ground, leaving a trail of blood, or the floor of this building is no longer level, and after she died, the blood oozing from her body dripped southwest. Ugh, a grisly scene. And that is the new Appalachian Central Trainyard. An awful pre-war drama. Lots of interesting Easter eggs, but more importantly, we got what we came for. Heading back to Sofia, we can tell her that the Protectron is no longer a threat.
Same as the other USSA robots. Right before you arrived, it sent out 2 signal bursts. One to a robo-brain and another to something else. Are you with me on this, my friend? Can I count on you?
If I wasn't into this, I would have kicked you out of my camp already.
Fair enough. Well, I'm glad I can provide you with some entertainment, my good friend. It means a lot to me, you know.
I don't have anything else to do, so why not? I like adventure.
That's exactly the reason why I became an astronaut. Well, I had plenty to do. I mean, the love of adventure part.
You mean you're not paying me? Jeez.
Hey, that's the spirit. You always know how to make me laugh. Thank you, my friend.
Of course. I'm here for you, Commander. I promise.
Please, call me Sofia. And thank you. It means so much after everything else has been changed. You've been here for me the whole time. I couldn't have done any of this without you, you know. And that means a lot to me. Locating that medical cache that has that serum wasn't actually as hard as I thought it might be. Hopefully it'll be a milk run to pick up, too. I suddenly realized that the expression milk run might not have much of a meaning in this apocalyptic world. Yeah, since everything is dangerous now.
Well, I mean, Brahmins still give milk. I suppose you could still go on a milk run to milk a Brahmin. It is kind of a stretch, though. Well, what will you do with this serum?
Honestly, I'm not sure. Part of me just wants to see it. To see what they used. To know it was real, I guess.
What do you think Emerson is up to?
It sounded like he had some demons in his past that he wanted to take care of. Probably he's been putting it off for a while. That's my guess anyway.
I'll find this serum. Won't take long.
It's probably decades old and unusable by now, but it might tell us something. I'm not a chemist, though. Maybe... I don't know.
Are you able to get any rest these days?
Not much. Headaches still come and go, and it's hard to sleep through those. I'd give anything for these headaches to end.
What's with these USSA robots? Shouldn't they be attacking you?
I hear you. I thought they were coming after me, but I'm not sure. Maybe they have other motives, too. Safer to just deal with them, though.
Yeah, the algorithm update we found on that last Protectron was really weird. They were initially set to search and destroy, but then something, using the authorization code USSA 1010, switched the mode to monitor and defend. But we still don't know who or why. At this point, however, we can again flirt with Sofia by saying, "It feels good to have you here in my home."
Really? I was worried for a bit that you might be, unenthused about taking care of some random stray, even though my options were clearly heavily limited by the, entire world situation. The only decent thing so far has been meeting you.
I'll be back later, Sofia.
Affirmative. Out.
With that, we complete the quest Boot Camp and begin the quest Past Expiration. Find a sample of the serum made for the Deep Sleep Project. Retrieve Serum Z. Even though, as we already learned, Serum Z was developed by Arctos Pharma, Sofia's data points us towards the Westtech Research Facility. What did Westtech experimenting with FEV need Serum Z for? At any rate, I don't have time to cover it today. But never fear, we'll pick up right here where I leave off in my next episode. I publish new Fallout videos each and every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss the next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have already but you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find them on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. YouTube members and patrons on Patreon are becoming increasingly important as YouTube continues to make platform changes that make the future of YouTube monetization uncertain. So to all my members on YouTube and my patrons on Patreon, you have my sincerest thanks. I couldn't do this without you. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more brand new videos.